Hello, and welcome to another edition of Chamber TV. This is episode number 216. My name is Laurie White, and I'm the president of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce in Providence, Rhode Island. And Providence is the home to our distinguished guest today, and he's an internet sensation, 20 million followers around the world, best-selling author, none other than the real Judge Frank Caprio. Judge Caprio,
Well,
welcome to Chamber TV. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
This is great. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to be able to chat with you today and talk a little bit about your book, which is now out and is a bestseller, by the way, and all about your days in Providence as the leader of our municipal court in Providence. Your offices are just a stone throw away from the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. So we are so thrilled to have you today. So how is your day going? Let's start with that.
I had a very wonderful day so far. Today is Valentine's Day, actually. So I'm not sure if that fits in with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always a day to celebrate people that are near and dear to us. And, we can do that every day, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your memoir, which has just come out, and I have a copy here. Just want to make sure that everybody knows that Judge Caprio and I had the opportunity to get together over lunch back in November, and lucky me, I was able to snag a beautiful copy of this book in advance. And Judge Caprio, you and I had such a lovely time going over all the pages in the book and what really motivated you to write Compassion in the Court, life-changing stories from America's Nicest Judge. So you've been on television, you've been all over the world talking about your book. You've been doing many appearances on media outlets all over the country. So tell us a little bit about the book and what made you write it.
I was born into what I refer to as a very fortunate situation, that I had the privilege of growing up poor. And my life experiences as a young child really molded my temperament later in life, and particularly the influence of my parents. My parents were both immigrants from Italy. So that's what motivated me to write the book, to share my experiences in life, my early life experiences, which really dictated what I did on the court. And to me, it was very surprising that showing the temperance and understanding and compassion has resonated so much around the world, not only in the United States. So I thought I'd share some of those experiences with others, and that's why I wrote the book.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about your history, if you will, your trajectory as a judge. And it's interesting that we talk about municipal court. Municipal court is probably someplace where you see the universal experience of humanity. And as you point out in your book, people of all types walk into your courtroom on a daily basis, and they're there for violations of, traffic or what you would describe as, small offenses. Give us a sense of some of what went through your mind in the early days when you took the bench, and maybe how it changed as you progressed over the years.
What was uppermost in my mind is that most people, when they come to the Providence Municipal Court, that is the first and only time that they've been to court. And, the courtroom could be a very intimidating experience. You have a judge with a robe, you have a police officer with a gun, you have an oak panel courtroom. And if I treated people rudely or with disrespect, then you never know how that would mold their opinion of the judiciary, particularly if there are young children in the courtroom, because that would be their only experience being exposed to the judiciary. So I was always mindful of that. And that's why I always made an extra special attempt to be considerate and to be understanding of those people that were before me and give them the benefit of the doubt.
You didn't start off that way, though. You had compassion in your soul, and you had a certain demeanor and a certain perspective on the humanity of the everyday person. But tell us about chapter page 19 in your book, Judge Caprio, when you talk about my first day as a judge and what it taught me about compassion. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, my first day in court, I made sure that my dad came down to the courtroom. And so one of the first people that came before me was this woman who had 3 kids. She said, I have 3 kids. And I forget what her offenses were, but they were parking and maybe a speeding violation. But she was very rude. And I was trying to reason with her, but she was unreasonable. And so she was very combative in her conversation with me. And as hard as I tried, I wasn't successful. So I decided that I would fine her the full fine, which this is my first day on the court, and I'm going to assert myself, and no one's going to put it over on me. So but upon reflection, I could have handled it a lot differently. I was a little combative myself. So my dad was in the courtroom. Of course, he came down to see me. It's my first day. He's coming down. He's so proud. He's sitting in the court. So as soon as court is over, I go into chambers. My dad is waiting for me. So I said, Dad, how did I do? He said, how did you do? He says, that woman. I said, what woman? He said, the woman with the 3 kids. You fined her the full fine. I said, Dad, she was disrespectful. I couldn't reason with her. He said, Frank, you're in a position of authority. He said, she isn't. She had 3 kids. Now you don't know if she can feed those kids tonight. How that's going to affect her. You can't take that position. You have to put yourself in their shoes. You weren't brought up that way. That's not the thing to do. So my first day on the court, my temperament was predetermined for the rest of my tenure. And it was all because my dad set me straight. It's not about you, it's about them.
Throughout the course of your book, you describe various circumstances where people come and they've stood before you and they've really explained very difficult things happening in your life, which possessed you to have to question, what would I do if I were in their shoes? Give us one example of, and I've seen it on your show numerous times, played back, but the lovely man who came before you, who was taking his son to get chemotherapy treatments.
Oh, that was Victor. His name was Victor Coelho, and he was 86 years old. 96. And he was charged with speeding. And when I asked him how he pleaded, he very roughly said, Judge, I don't speed. I was taking my son for chemo treatments. And I said, well, how old is your son? And he says, his son was in his 60s at the time. So we went on talking about taking care of the family unit, and as a result, we forged a very strong bond with Victor Coelho. He lived to be 102. Obviously, I dismissed the case. He was taking his son for chemo. His son was 87, but just placing myself in the shoes of the person that was before me was what I tried to do. I guess Victor was actually 96, not 86, and his son was 67, I believe.
Yeah.
But
well, that whole experience, that whole instance, really was the manifestation of how you grew up. So the central character throughout your book, the central force throughout your book, is the influence of Tup. Tell us who Tup is.
Oh, Tup was my father. My father's real name was Antonio, but his nickname was Tup because when he was younger, he was working on the pushcart that his father pushed on Dartmouth Avenue. And on one particularly cold day, when he went into the restaurant where his father was. His face was frozen, and he attempted to order a cup of coffee, and he ordered a tup of toffee. And all of my grandfather's friends were there. My father was a young man, and for the rest of his days, he was called Tup or Tup of Toffee. So he had a profound influence on my life, I can tell you that.
And your father was a milkman, and you, as a young boy yourself, it was the highlight of your boyhood to be able to join him on the truck and go out first thing in the morning, before dawn, and deliver the milk with Tup with your dad.
Yeah, my father's family, when they first emigrated from Italy, were fruit peddlers, and they had a push cart on what is now Di Pasquale Avenue. And then after my father married, he became a milkman. And my older brother and I, my dad would wake us up at 4 o'clock in the morning when we were, particularly in the summer, and have us work on the truck because he was a firm believer in education. And he thought that he would then make sure that we stayed in school. And we'd complain, say, Dad, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And he'd say, if you don't want to do this the rest of your life, then you make sure you stay in school. And he succeeded. My older brother and I, we both were able to complete a college degree.
Mm-hmm. So this is a show for business professionals. So we're the Chamber of Commerce, and we talk a lot about issues that impact people in business, people that are looking to accelerate their careers and the like. But your dad, Tup, had a very interesting business philosophy when it came to delivering the milk. He didn't. He said, "You know what? I've got my own rules." Tell us about that.
My father's route was on Federal Hill, and there were many people that were struggling financially. And he had orders from his superiors that if the milk wasn't paid for 2 weeks, that he had to stop delivery. And those were the orders from the company. My father had his own orders, and that was that if they had children, he would not stop the milk. And he almost got fired a few times, but he would not stop the milk if they had children. He said, I'm not going to be responsible for youngsters not getting their nourishment because they didn't pay the bill. And many times, my dad would take money out of his own pocket as a partial payment and say to his superiors, they're making an attempt to pay. So those were and my father would actually do this, presence of my brother and myself, and he would talk about it. And he'd talk about poor people. We were poor, but he'd talk about poor people and say, you have to help them out. You can't look down upon them. So those were the influences that I was exposed to as a young man.
During the course of your tenure on the bench, at one point, the courtroom began to, be the site for a broadcast, a television show, Caught in Providence. And from there, your career really took a trajectory, went straight up in terms of being able to show real people what happens in a courtroom, especially when your program became syndicated. What do you think it is? What do you think it is about the type of people, the type of compassion that you distilled on a daily basis? Why do you think that has really touched a nerve throughout the world?
Well, I think there's a lack of understanding universally and compassion, not only in the United States, but in the world. And I have said oftentimes, I did nothing special on the bench except to do what I was taught to do as a youngster. And that is be understanding and be kind and be compassionate. But I saw that with my father on a milk truck. I saw it when people couldn't pay the bill, and he'd help them out. But this was something that was not new that I learned outside the family unit. The basic unit of society, the family unit, is where my compassion came from.
Yeah. So that really set the tone for you being able to share these lessons to go viral, if you will. And during our many, many lunches together, Judge Caprio, I was always stunned, no matter where we were, the degree to which you were a rock star, a celebrity. People wanted to do selfies with you. And you shared with me, you say, oh, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. I can walk through the airport in Dubai and the same thing happens. People recognize me because they recognize compassion. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, I think it's something that's lacking in our society, particularly in the judiciary. People have this view of the judiciary as being very strict and unbending. Now, I was very fortunate that I sat on a bench where I had wide discretion. I wasn't dealing with homicides or bad felonies, people being stabbed. I was dealing with traffic offenses. But even though it was only traffic offenses, the overwhelming majority, almost everyone that came before the court, it was their first impression of the court. It was their first time being in court. So many of them came, with trepidation and fear, because we have a very large minority population in Providence. And they come in, and from the countries that they come from, the discipline is much stricter than it is in our court system. And so they came in scared to death, particularly when they had children. And I was always mindful of this, and I was always very, very understanding in the disposition of those cases.
Any one case jump out at you as something that that really impacted your heart in such a way that it really transformed everything you did following?
Well, there were several. One was Victor Coelho, who we talked about already. Victor came in, and we stayed in touch with Victor until Victor died at 102. But there was another case that came in. This woman came before me, and in the middle of her explanation about why she didn't pay her tickets, she started to cry and said, if only I was there, it never would have happened. And it had absolutely nothing to do with the matter that was before me. So I asked her what she was referring to. And she says, my brother killed my son. They got into an argument. And if I was there, it never would have happened. And that has impacted her life to such a degree that the last thing on her mind was paying parking tickets. So it's, and I could go on and regale you with stories, none as severe as that. But that was one of the more heinous ones.
Yeah. So we are talking to the real Frank Caprio, Judge Frank Caprio. He is the author of the book that is now a bestseller on Amazon, Compassion in the Court, Life-Changing Stories from America's Nicest Judge. What's it like to be known as America's Nicest Judge?
Well, it's a nice feeling, to be honest with you. I get asked that question all the time. But I'll answer that question in this manner, that the matters that came before me were matters in which I did have great discretion to dismiss cases. These were not homicides. These were not break-in and entries. These were not bodily injury. These were traffic tickets. And it left me with great discretion, and I exercised that discretion very liberally.
Tell us about the book and how we can buy it and how the sales are going, and give us a little sense of what your book tour has been like.
Well, you can buy the book at any bookstore in the country. That's number one. It's going very well. It was number one in 3 categories up until a day ago. I'm not sure what's going on with that now, but evidently it struck a chord nationally. So I'm very pleased about that.
What have you been doing in terms of celebrity appearances to promote the book?
Well, we had a book signing in Barrington. There over 100 people showed up, and we have several other book signings now scheduled. Right now, I am out of state, but when I get back, we're going to have more book signings. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your Instagram and your Facebook following. You, how many are you up to now? How many million?
Well, I believe it's 25 million on Instagram.
Instagram and Facebook,
No,
25 million
no.
followers.
It's actually, I'm getting messages here. It's 25 million because I don't keep track of these numbers. So I'm getting messages. Where is it?
Well, we'll go with that. That seems to be a number that is
All social
absolutely
media. It's all social media. It's 25,000, 25 million. All
25
social
million.
media.
Okay. So what's next for you? Let me ask you how you've been feeling. I know that all of us have been following your very, very, very courageous battle with pancreatic cancer, and you are a beacon of hope to so many people that are suffering through any type of health issue. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's a long road. I'm still being treated with chemo, uh, and I'm not out of the woods yet. So I'm fighting the battle. And my advice to anyone else who has a similar illness is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Right now, I'm optimistic. I'll stay optimistic. I'm not quitting. And I'm depending very heavily on prayers. I'm a very firm believer in prayers. So, and when I first was diagnosed and went public, I made a public appeal for prayers. And so I will reinstate that to those that are listening now, that if you have an extra moment, just throw in an extra prayer for me.
Tell us about how you approach your social media following. Do you post every day, Judge Caprio?
Every single day, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you
I
come
wish
up
I
with ideas?
Well, I have a team that does that. I'll be honest. If it was me, I'm not sure there'd be a blank page, but I have a team that does that, and particularly those that affect people's livelihoods. So I'm very pleased with the results. I get the results. I don't get the input. I get the results. The results are actually astounding.
Okay. All right. So, one last question. One of the facets of your personality that I have found so amazing is your ability to connect with people. You share your stories with heart and with sincerity. And when you first went public with your diagnosis, and you said, I'm going to lose my hair. I'm going to have to get a. I'm going to have to get a hat. What happened after that?
I've learned that I should not make any requests, even haphazardly, because I have now a spare room at my office that is filled with hats. I receive hats from all over the world. So I have any kind of hat you can think of, I have. And I don't wear that many hats now, but as you can see, I'm getting some hair. I'm getting some hair back. I was completely bald last week.
Well, I love your social media producers. They did a great job capturing a reel where you were taking on and off different hats and different colors, different
Oh,
sizes,
yeah.
different shapes, different styles. The whole thing. It was really quite remarkable, and it just shows that people care, and they've been inspired by you and your discussion and your heartfelt notion of compassion. And as you point out, it really doesn't cost anything, right? To be compassionate. It's something that you can pull out of your heart and bring to the forefront anytime, any moment of the day, right?
All it does is make other people feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you've done something well.
So with that, I am going to let you go. I know you have a very, very busy day, and I want to thank you so very much, and thank you to your family and to your wife for making time for us today to go through and have this lovely conversation with you and to promote your book. And I highly recommend it. I have read it 3 times, cover to cover, including one day where I read the entire thing. So I did a binge read the day after we had lunch, Judge Caprio, and I just took so much from it, so much value. I learned so much. It was poignant, and then I made it a point to go back and reread it and reread it again. So it's the kind of book that once you once you understand the cadence of it, you see something and you find something new every time you read it, a different nuance, a different thing that triggers a moment of your own compassion and your own reflection. So once again, tell us how you can order the book. You just go on Amazon. Tell us how to do it and how to follow you on social media. We want to tweak your. We want to get those followers increased, Judge Caprio.
You can buy the book on Amazon, or actually at any bookstore. All the bookstores have it. So sales have been going very well. Actually, it was #1 for a while. I haven't checked it in a day or two. We'll see how it's doing.
Okay. Well, will you come back in a couple of months and tell us how it's been, what you've learned from the book tour, and give us an update on how you're feeling and some other lessons that we might learn that we might employ in our daily businesses?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to be on. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge.